I'm Katie Trazo. I'm for the soil because the soil nourishes us.
Welcome to another episode of For the Soil Conversation. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii, joined by my co-host, Mary Sketch Bryant with the Virginia Soil Health Coalition, and Eric Benfelt with Virginia Cooperative Extension Community Viability. And guys, we have a returning guest for this episode. Eric, would you do the introduction?
Yes, Jeff, and we're pleased again to have Kasper Krabbe with us. Kasper's doctoral student at Aarhus University in Denmark and presently doing an exchange here in Virginia, working closely with the Virginia Tech Center for Food Systems and Community Transformation. And just really pleased to have Kasper talk about the social values that farmers and the people of Denmark and Northern Europe hold. And Kasper, we had visited a little bit, and my paternal grandmother, her family came from northern part of Germany, and my wife and I had the opportunity to visit Denmark, and it reminded me a lot of the Midwest, Ohio or Iowa area. So I'd like to just explore a little bit more about what's inspired you and your research into soil values with this episode.
Yeah, thank you very much for welcoming me once again, and I'll gladly take some of your questions and do my best to sort of have a good conversation with you.
Casper, so you've brought up this idea of soil values, and then talked some about why it matters when we're thinking about implementation of soil health and long-term impacts. How do you go about learning a farmer's soil values? Like, what does that look like, methods-wise?
So first of all, let me say that most of the work sort of going on at universities, at least my home university at the moment, in relation to soil health, is sort of funded by the European Union, because the European Union and European Commission, they have sort of realized fairly recently that the state of the European agricultural soils is so bad to the degree that this is something that we really must take a quick turn on, and we must implement certain practices rather sooner than later to sort of counter this movement of soil degradation. So that is sort of what funds a lot of different projects, both those that, in my case, have a much more human values perspective to them, but also sort of more strict social science projects that sort of assess the state of the soils and how different treatment of them might put them in a better position for the years to come. And then for your questions on sort of how to assess it. Well, I'm fairly new in this field also, so I'm also still learning from different colleagues and also people here at Virginia Tech about how they do these things. But I think research into how different farmers, they sort of envision soil health and how they should promote it can be done in a lot of different ways. A lot of different ways. And something that I spoke to Eric about a few days ago, actually, I might tell you a little bit about it here, is that I recently made a study in Denmark. It's an article that is hopefully getting out there soon, but this is an article sort of digging into different farmers in Denmark that have agricultural fields on wetlands. And those wetlands, they are, widely known as emitting a lot of greenhouse gases if they are not kept underwater. So if you keep sort of doing agricultural activities on them, a lot of greenhouse gases will be emitted to the atmosphere, which is not good. So we were sort of asked by the Danish government, us as university professionals, to go out and talk to farmers and make an assessment of sort of what would be their minimum price, so to say, in terms of monetary value to take some of these wetlands out of production and put them back underwater to sort of make sure that this water would sort of make, I don't know, a roof on the carbon potential of the soils, and thereby not emit the greenhouse gas emissions to the extent that they would do if the soils were drained for agricultural purposes. And I think just this premise is very interesting, that sort of some people, maybe some politicians or government professionals, sometimes they have the ideas that, and this is sort of a long-lasting reality, right? That there is this cliche about farmers that they always think in terms of economic rationality. So as I mentioned, sort of the government and the ministry, they were interested in sort of getting an idea about how much money do we need to pay these guys to adopt the agri-environmental schemes that we are offering them to take this land out of production and thereby uh, uh, sort of reach the political climate goals of the country much faster. But when we then went out there to talk to a lot of these farmers, sort of not asking them about actually their perception of what their economic and financial minimum price of taking out this land would be, a lot of different sort of perspectives on sort of the soils and the land's intrinsic values to them came out. And I'll just mention maybe one of them to you, is that a lot of these farmers, right, if they said, well, if I stop my agricultural production on this land and remove all the drainage systems and sort of flood it and make it into the creek maybe that it once was, the problem for me is that a lot of my fellow farmers, my peer farmers, my colleagues, they will drive by my farm and they will look at my farmland and they will see water, flood, and different weeds, and they will think of me as a non-reasonable farmer who doesn't know how to keep tidy fields and just generally look upon me as not being a very good farmer, because farming aesthetics over the years have sort of been keeping straight lines, very clean, tidy fields. So this is just to mention to you that when you actually go out there and talk to farmers and sort of allow them to give their perspectives on different ways of their thinkings and sort of the ways in which they have to navigate the expectation systems of what is a good farmer, things other than money comes out there. So how to go about this sort of doing research into farmer decision making in the first place, I would say, is do not go out there with certain uh, uh, how do you say, assumptions, very fixed assumptions on what their incentives might be. You need to be very open and sort of let the farmers teach you on what they are there, sort of the practical professionals on.
We're talking today with Kasper Krabbe. He is a native of Denmark and a doctoral student at Aarhus University in Denmark. He is currently in Blacksburg, Virginia at Virginia Tech and doing some doctoral studies there. You used a phrase, Kasper, that I really latched on to: economically rational. That is a great phrase when it comes to farmers, because that's what it's all about to farmers. If they can't make a living doing it, then, what's the use? And Mary, you had a great question: soil value. I immediately, as a farmer, I latched on to soil value as NPK and mineral content and organic content. I was looking at numbers. But soil value, Kasper, is a completely different topic. You talked about soil value from the community perspective, from the global perspective. How important is healthy soil?
Well, it's extremely important. No, again, I must say I'm not sort of a politician or a very experienced soil scientist, but it is out there that the states of the soils are degrading, and if we continue to treat them in a bad manner, we will definitely influence our capabilities to actually have healthy foods and a stable food system for the years to come. So it is something that is maybe not known to the general public, that the state of the soils are bad, at least in Europe, but it is something that is going to influence all of us if we do not manage to do anything reasonable about it. So it is very, very important.
And Casper, I have a follow-up question, and I think a saying here in the U.S. is "Don't treat your soil like dirt." I think that's it's something that you hear often. And Casper, I'd like to hear a little bit more about your research. In the last episode, you mentioned about asking farmers, producers to close their eyes and envision what the soil ecosystem is like. If you could share maybe an aha moment from a farmer as well as from yourself as you actually engaged in this method of understanding people's values.
Yes, absolutely. Well, first of all, just to let you in a little bit on sort of the idea behind having people draw certain things, is because me not having sort of the agricultural educational program behind me, I'm not always sure what people and especially farmers are taught if they sort of go through the traditional ag schools. So it's interesting to me what is sort of top of mind for them when they are being asked about. So what soil functions and soil components make up a soil ecosystem and your soil ecosystem. And depending on their background as farmers, they will have different versions and ideas about what is significant and what really makes up a healthy soil. Some will start out by drawing rainworms. Some will start out by drawing NPK, as you mentioned, Jeff, and other people will start out by drawing sunlight or rain, and some people will start out by drawing root systems of different crops. So it is very, very different how we sort of envision ecosystems and what is top of mind for us. And I am sure after having talked to a lot of people and making them sort of do this exercise, that what is top of mind for you when you sort of envision this ecosystem will influence the ways in which you go about actually, let's say, caring for these ecosystems on a daily basis. Because let's say you are a very traditional, conventional farmer, you might not necessarily have sort of different fungi systems below the soil as top of mind when you think about the ecosystem. This, uh, whereas some farmers that sort of have the soil fungi ecosystem as their top of mind function when they think about the soil, they would maybe be less incentivized to go out there and do deep soil tilling, because depending on how you sort of envision and perceive this overall system and how to care for it to sort of support its the soil's overall thriving, what are you going to do about it? So some of these people, they will maybe be less inclined to do this tilling because they'll see it as sort of killing of an important habitat that we should care for in order to to reach our goal. So there are different goals among different farmers. Some farmers, they have healthy soil as sort of top of mind goal for them, whereas other farmers, they sort of have the crops and ideas about what to feed the crops. And then some regenerative, self-described regenerative farmers also that I've met here in Virginia, they say, well, first of all, we have to make sure that we have a very stable and healthy soil, and then the rest will come. So those drawing exercises, sort of making those farmers thinking about how those ecosystems how they look like and what they work, it's both an idea about it gives us an idea about what they consider as significant, but it's also just a great conversation opener to people that are not necessarily used to talking every day about certain things like university professionals. They are very, yeah, used to.
And Casper, we just have a couple minutes left, but would be interested if there's anything, and I know you're still in the midst of your research, but anything you've learned or taken away that, is implications with how we work with farmers. We work with a lot of practitioners here who go and do outreach to farmers, trying to get them to adopt different practices or whatnot. How should we be doing that differently?
That's a big question, and I think you guys would probably have more reasonable answers to that one than I do. But uh, sort of eye-opening to me, coming from a country where, let's say, the sort of the overall farming system and the farming information discourse system is very different. We do not have extension agents. And yeah, our system is just very different over in Denmark. But it is interesting to go out there and talk to farmers that sort of describe themselves as being interested in promoting soil health. And a lot of them, they sort of let me know that they sometimes feel a bit alone, in the sense that they don't necessarily know where to go if they want very specialized advice on how to further promote soil health. So they have to sort of turn towards associations or peer farmers that kind of have the same ambitions, or they have to sort of go to places online. And one of the farmers gave me this. This was a beef cattle farmer. He sort of let me in on the concept of grazing gurus that are people online that sort of offer courses to people that want to promote this. And this just points to the fact that I think, as sort of a support system to farmers, I think we are lacking a little bit. And I see similar things across the pond, east of Richmond, as Jeff said, that we need to somehow make up systems that, to a much better degree, offer good, reasonable advice to those farmers that really want to take the extra step in promoting certain ecosystem services, without them having to fear for that we actually just want to sell them some chemicals, or that we want to, or that we do not necessarily know exactly what we're talking about. But this is a big discussion also, how we go there. And I know that there are a lot of extension agents, right, that are good fit to give very good advice to some of these farmers. But maybe in general, most of the extension agents here, I don't know, this is a question for you also, maybe they are not attuned to giving advice to those sort of niche farmers that are trying to change the overall system.
Very well said. And Kasper, we greatly appreciate your insights. And once again, we've been talking today with Kasper Krabbe. He is a native of Denmark. He is a PhD student at Aarhus University in the Department of Agroecology, Agricultural Systems, and Sustainability. And once again, Kasper, thank you so much for your time. For the Soil, a Conversation is made possible with funding support from the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Agua Fund. Other partners include the USDA's Natural Resources Conservation Service, Virginia Cooperative Extension, Virginia State University, Virginia Department of Conservation and Recreation, and partners of the Virginia Soil Health Coalition. Views expressed on this podcast are those of each individual guest. To download a copy of this or any other episode, visit the website forthesoil.org. That's the digit 4, thesoil.org. And if you have a specific question about soil health, just contact your local extension office, your local USDA service center, or a Soil and Water Conservation District office. Music used during today's program was provided courtesy of the Flip Charts, all rights reserved. For the Soil, a Conversation is produced by On the Farm Radio in collaboration with Virginia Tech. I'm your host, Jeff Ishii.